Welcome to Voice of Stories. Discover tales that inspire, captivate, and bring words to life. Subscribe for unforgettable stories.
Title: The Silent Escape. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday evening as the dim light of the kitchen spilled over our suburban home. After a long day at the office, I was wrapping up a presentation for an important client meeting. My job as a financial analyst demanded precision, and for the personal segment, I thought a family photo would add the perfect touch. I wanted to use one from the past, from the days when the twins were still small, their laughter filling the air like music. The best collection of these photos was on Sarah's phone. I grabbed it off the counter and unlocked the screen, but this time, a message flashed. Face ID not recognized. It was odd. I'd unlocked her phone countless times before. I tried again, but the message repeated. I glanced up at Sarah, who was in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. "Hey, did you change your Face ID settings?" I asked. She paused, then continued scrubbing a plate as if nothing had happened. "Oh yeah," she said almost too casually. "It was acting up, so I reset it for security reasons." There was something in her tone, a stiffness that I couldn't ignore. It reminded me of the times when she'd come home late from work. Her face too guarded, her excuses too rehearsed. "Can you unlock it for me?" I asked, trying to keep things casual. She hesitated, the briefest flicker of discomfort crossing her features. "Why don't I just find the photo for you?" she replied, brushing her hair behind her ear before stepping into the other room. A small seed of suspicion was planted in my mind. What was she hiding? Why was she acting so defensive? When she returned, the photo was already pulled up, ready for me. She handed me the phone with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Here you go," she said, her voice overly bright. I quickly sent the photo to myself, trying to shake the uneasy feeling that was crawling up my spine. But it lingered. Something was off. The walls between us had suddenly grown taller, and it made me question everything I thought I knew. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't help myself. "Sarah, why did you really change the password?" I asked, my voice low. She didn't turn to face me. "I told you, it was for security." I pressed on. "Come on, we've never had secrets before. What's different now?" Her voice snapped back, defensive. "Not everything has to mean something, okay? You're overthinking this." But her anger, the way she clamped down on the conversation, made my gut tighten. She'd never reacted like this to a simple question before. There was more here than she was letting on. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. Sarah was getting more distant, always taking her calls in another room, her phone never out of sight. I could sense the walls closing in around me, and the silence between us was growing louder. Then, one evening, as Sarah left for one of her late meetings, I finally snapped. The nagging feeling in my chest demanded action. I pretended to settle into my evening routine, kissed her goodbye, and waited until I heard the car pull out of the driveway. I grabbed my phone and checked the location tracking app, something we'd set up years ago. I wasn't paranoid, but the situation had changed. The app showed her at a hotel across town, far from her office. My heart dropped. I told myself there must be a reasonable explanation, that maybe it was just a client. But deep down, I knew the truth was slipping through my fingers. I drove to the hotel, parked in a shadowed corner of the lot, and waited. An hour passed, then 2. My thoughts raced, but I forced myself to remain calm. Finally, I saw her. Sarah walked out of the hotel, her arm linked with a man I didn't recognize. They were laughing, leaning into each other in a way that should have been mine. The kind of laughter I hadn't heard in years. I turned and drove home in silence, a cold, hollow ache gnawing at me. The life I thought I knew was unraveling before my eyes. The next few days were a blur of rage, disbelief, and questions. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, was slipping away. I began collecting evidence, texts, photos, messages, anything that would confirm what I already feared. Sarah's affair wasn't just physical. It was a complete betrayal of everything we'd shared. She had rewritten our past, casting me as the villain in her story. justifying her choices. I had always believed in trust, in love. But now, I was faced with the wreckage of a life I couldn't even recognize. I had to make a choice. Would I let her destroy me, or would I take control of the end of our story? I spent days preparing for what I knew would come next. I started working with a lawyer, organizing my finances, and planning for my exit. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming my life, the one she had so carelessly shattered. When the time came to confront her, I didn't hesitate. I had everything I needed. I walked into the kitchen that morning, where she sat sipping coffee, unaware of what was about to unfold. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady. She looked up, surprised. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice almost too calm. I placed my phone on the table, opened a series of incriminating messages, and tapped the screen. "Explain this," I said, forcing the words through gritted teeth. She looked down at the phone. Panic flashed in her eyes before she masked it with anger. "You've been spying on me?" she scoffed. "What kind of husband does that?" "The kind whose wife has been lying to him for months," I replied coldly. Sarah's defiance melted into something darker. "You think I didn't need this? A little excitement? You were always too busy with work, always too focused on everyone but me." Her words struck like a slap, and I felt my resolve harden. I had worked so hard for us, for this life. And now she was throwing it away for some fleeting thrill. I took a deep breath and met her gaze. "I'm done," I said. "I'm filing for divorce. You don't get to keep any of this." Sarah's face twisted in fury. "You can't just take everything," she spat. "What about the house, the kids?" The mention of our children hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't abandoning them. I was protecting them from the chaos she'd created. "I've already taken care of it. You'll get far less than you think." The fight between us escalated, and Sarah tried everything she could to turn the tables. But the more she fought, the more she exposed her lies. The truth had already won. In the end, the divorce was finalized, and Sarah was left with little more than the consequences of her choices. The house was mine, and the man she had betrayed me for? He disappeared as soon as he realized the security she had offered him was gone. I was free. The months that followed were a quiet reckoning. I moved to a small town, starting over with nothing but my freedom. I kept a low profile, blending into my new life as Mark Evans, someone who was no longer defined by the past, by betrayal, or by the woman who had shattered everything I had worked for. And as the years passed, the memories of Sarah, of the life we had, began to fade. My past became a distant echo, something I no longer felt the sting of. But sometimes, when I was alone, I wondered if she ever thought of me, of what we once had, or if she had simply moved on, like so many others who never had the courage to look back. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was a man who had found freedom in silence.